and guys didn't seem like they was too interested in tackling them. So I think our mindset is a little different.
Surprise. Get that cone out of my face!
The man known as Derrick Henry needs no introduction. Standing in at 6'3" and almost 250 pounds, he is essentially a linebacker playing the running back position. And in 2020, the Baltimore Ravens looked like they were the best team in the NFL, and it looked like absolutely nobody can stop them, as they had gone 14-2, only losing 2 games in weeks 3 and 4. That is, up until they had to face King Henry. This is the story of how the Ravens built their defense to specifically stop Derrick Henry, and also how they ended up slaying the king in his own kingdom. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's video, first things first, I want to ask you to please smash that like button and hit that subscribe button. Anything you guys do absolutely helps me out and supports me. And first of all, we have to give a huge shout out to Jeremiah Kane, BT Comedy, The New Mexico Life, KTSE Sports Talk, Broskis, Luis Garcia, David Martin, Codex 655, Joe the Jobber, Isaiah Arana, Isaiah Campbell, and We Talk, Marco Reyes, Chen Dog, Daryl West, Johor Lekowski, and The Living Dummy. Shout out to you guys. I really do appreciate you guys for supporting me and being a member of the channel. Second shout out, this is for my guys over there at the Lunch Break Hot Take. Please make sure you guys go subscribe to their channel and watch their streams and watch their videos. They have a lot of good stuff going on, man. I always peek in every now and again and just kind of see what they got, what they're talking about. They have very good, conversation, but the reason I'm giving them a shout out is because I don't know if the camera can really pick up the quality of what they sent me, but look at this token, look at this coin. It looks amazing. It came in this beautiful red box. I just want to give a huge shout out to those guys. I'm going to see if I can actually show you the coin that they sent me right here. Beautiful. It has their logo on it. It has this in the back. It just looks awesome, and I want to give a huge shout out to the guys from Lunch Break Hot Take. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The Baltimore Ravens were coming off a bye week as they had advanced to the divisional round with the very first seed in the AFC after going 14-2 and once again looking unstoppable. And right before the game, there was some comments made by a player only known as Earl Thomas, aka ET3, who it actually became very infamous after what happened in the game. So Earl Thomas basically talked about how the Patriots didn't look like they wanted to tackle Derrick Henry, and then unfortunately Earl Thomas was in a predicament that he tried to tackle Derrick Henry, but then he ended up just getting absolutely embarrassed, posterized, memed, whatever you want to say. He got stiff-armed into oblivion and got turned into a blocker for Derrick Henry. So that, of course, is one of the biggest moments out of that 2020 divisional round that everybody's going to remember, but also everybody remembers that Derrick Henry just absolutely dominated the Ravens defense that day. But today I want to focus on the Ravens defense and Derrick Henry specifically, and what the Ravens did in the following offseason to combat what Derrick Henry and the Titans did against them. So Derrick Henry's stats against the Ravens in the divisional round went like this: 30 carries for 195 yards, averaging 6.5 yards per carry. On top of that, he added 2 receptions for 7 yards, and he also threw a 3-yard touchdown. So Derrick Henry was just absolutely dominant that day, as even the numbers will tell you. In fact, if you count all of his touches, he had 33 touches for 205 yards and 1 touchdown, and he actually accounted for 205 out of the 300 total yards the Titans had that day. That's almost 70% of the entire yardage total. That is just absolutely insane that one man can account for almost 70% of the entire offensive output of the Titans that day. So the Ravens got embarrassed. They lost 28-12 to the Tennessee Titans in Baltimore, and then they followed it up with that offseason, and Eric DeCosta said, "We are not letting that happen again." While they did lose some key pieces in nose tackle Michael Pierce to the Vikings and linebacker Josh Bynes to the Bengals in free agency, they also went out and made some moves. The very first thing the Ravens did was they did franchise tag Matt Judon. Now, that may not be directly because of Derrick Henry, but it was definitely a contributing factor. The Ravens needed pass rush, and Matt Judon just happened to be that guy. Whether he lived up to that franchise tag or not, that's another conversation, but the fact of the matter is the Ravens did franchise tag him. Then they followed that up with trading for defensive end Calais Campbell, they only gave up a 5th-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Calais Campbell, one of the best run stuffers and also interior pass rushers, and that move had to be directly because of Derrick Henry. Let's also not forget that Calais Campbell was on the Jaguars, and the Jaguars face the Titans twice a year due to them being in the same division. The Ravens then continued their moves on the defensive line as they added Derek Wolfe, who was a free agent. The Ravens continued to add to that D-line as they also decided to bring back some players such as nose tackle Justin Ellis, aka Jelly, and they also brought back defensive end Jihad Ward and outside linebacker Pernell McPhee, who does on occasion go on the inside and is definitely more of a bigger outside linebacker. So these were all moves to shore up that defensive line, that front, to really work on the outside zone runs and all that type of stuff that was destroying the Ravens defense in the playoff game. But the Ravens weren't done there. No, they went into the draft and they said, yes, we did shore up the defensive line. We have Brandon Williams, we have Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe, we brought back Justin Ellis, Jihad Ward, and Pernell McPhee, and we also brought back Matt Judon. Is that enough? No, that's not enough. First of all, they drafted linebacker Patrick Queen in the very first round with the 28th pick overall. Then in the 3rd round, they drafted another defensive lineman in Justin Madubuike. Later on in the 3rd round, they drafted another linebacker in Malik Harrison. And then they followed that up in the 5th round by drafting another defensive lineman in Broderick Washington. So it's clear that the Ravens were sending a message that what happened that night will never happen again. And then, of course, it has to be mentioned that before the season even started, there was a situation in which the Ravens had to go ahead and cut Earl Thomas. So now the poison was out of the locker room. There's just a lot to get into the Earl Thomas situation that I don't want to get into right now. So we'll go ahead and move on. But basically, Earl Thomas got in a fight with his opposing starting safety and literally punched him in the face. So of course he's going to get cut. But this is on top of a lot of microaggressions and a lot of statements that Earl Thomas made that may have rubbed the Ravens the wrong way. And he just ended up getting cut. He wasn't right for the team. So there's no longer Earl Thomas there to be memed and stiff-armed into oblivion by Derrick Henry no longer. And then the final piece that the Ravens did address was more of the pass rush. They went ahead and traded for Yannick Ngakoue from the Minnesota Vikings during their bye week. Now, while this wasn't directly for Derrick Henry, in my opinion, this was more so because the Ravens had been struggling to rush the passer. It still does affect the running game because Yannick Ngakoue wasn't horrible stopping the run. That wasn't his forte necessarily. The Ravens had a date with the Tennessee Titans in Week 11, just 10 months after the divisional round debacle, and we were ready to see if the defense was ready to stop the man-beast known as Derrick Henry, and will we actually see this defense in practice? Everything was ready to go, but then something happened. Injuries happened, and COVID happened. Going into the Week 11 game, the Ravens would no longer have their best run stoppers in Brandon Williams, their defensive tackle, and Calais Campbell. That would leave a lone wolf to go up against the King alone. Wolf and the depth defensive line ended up doing a decent job against King Henry, holding him to 104 yards on 27 carries for an average of 3.85 yards per carry. But then, it was one play. It was one final play at the end of overtime, where the Ravens needed Derek Wolfe and the rest of the defensive line to continue playing the way they were and just make one more play against King Henry, and they could not do it. Derrick Henry broke off a 29-yard touchdown to put the nail in the coffin and complete the comeback against the Baltimore Ravens at the bank once again. And just like that, the Ravens' Derrick Henry nightmare was not yet over. Fast forward a few weeks to the wild card round in the playoffs. The Ravens were not only rolling, but were also virtually fully healthy. The defense they had spent so much time that year constructing was at full force, and it was time to meet the King once again. This time in his own kingdom in Tennessee. What did Derrick Henry do against the Ravens in the wild card round? Here are the numbers. Derrick Henry ended the day with 18 carries for 40 yards with a 2.2 yard per carry average. On top of that, he had 3 receptions for 11 yards. A huge cry from his 205 yards that he had in the year prior in the divisional round. This time, he only accounted for 51 of the total 209 yards the Titans put up that day, which only ended up being 24% of the entire yardage total, from 70% of the entire offensive output to 24%. The Ravens would go on to win that game 20-13 and had finally overthrown the king in his own house. All the Ravens offseason moves finally paid off as the Ravens stood tall over the Tennessee Titans logo as they had just slayed the king. And obviously the Ravens fan base and the Ravens team themselves were feeling good, at least for 1 week until they had to go up against the Bills, and then their inability to move the ball on offense showed up once again. So basically the moral of the story and the message here that we're going to leave you here with today is, it's that the Ravens will do everything in their power to make sure that the defensive side of the ball will never be exposed as it once did. But the offensive side of the ball, they'll figure it out eventually. There's no problem there. If they get exposed, it's fine. We're developing young players. Oh, but the defensive side of the ball, no way. We have to address every single position immediately, especially if they got embarrassed in the playoffs. But that's going to go ahead and do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I absolutely appreciate that. Once again, don't forget to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about this game. The draft is fast approaching. I can't wait, man. I'm still considering whether I should stream or not. You guys let me know if you watched all the way to the end. I appreciate you. And again, just support me, man. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter. All that stuff is in the description box below. And I will see you in the next video. Later.